Right now, deep inside your brain, your entorhinal cortex is being colonized, and the researchers who have spent 40 years studying it admit they cannot stop it, not slow it, not contain it, not predict who it will take next. A misfolded protein is threading itself through your neurons right now, cell by cell, moving like a slow fire through dry grass. You cannot feel it. You have no alarm for it. And by the time any scan would catch it, it has already been traveling for years. By the end of this, you'll know the one rule high performers use to interrupt that spread, a rule the researchers themselves follow but almost never publish. What tau protein is actually doing to you right now is not what you were taught in any health class. You were told that Alzheimer's is something that happens to old people, something genetic, something you either get or you don't. That is wrong. Tau is a protein your brain makes on purpose. In a healthy brain, it stabilizes the tiny internal tracts your neurons use to transport nutrients. It is essential. It is supposed to be there. But under the right conditions, and those conditions are shockingly common, tau misfolds. It changes shape. And a misfolded tau protein does something with no parallel anywhere else in biology. It forces the healthy tau proteins around it to misfold too. It converts them. And those converted proteins convert their neighbors. The spread begins in your entorhinal cortex, your memory's filing system, long before you forget a single name. Here is the mechanism, because understanding it will change what you do tonight. When tau misfolds, the proteins cluster into tangled knots inside a neuron's internal highway. The nutrient transport system jams. The neuron, starved, begins to die, but before it dies, it releases those misfolded proteins into the space between cells. That is the moment everything gets worse. Neighboring neurons absorb the released proteins. The neuron that takes them in begins the same process, nodding, starving, releasing. The spread is not random. It follows your brain's own communication pathways, the exact routes your memories travel. Researchers watching this in live tissue described it as the brain turning against its own architecture, moving from the entorhinal cortex back into the hippocampus, then outward into the regions that govern judgment, language, and personality. A slow, silent overwrite, threading through the same paths you used to think. Right now, without your permission and without any signal you could detect. We're getting to how to interrupt it, but first, the part that should unsettle you. There is no approved therapy that clears tau tangles once they form. No drug stops the conversion cascade. The most promising trials, tau-targeting antibodies, years and hundreds of millions of dollars in development, failed repeatedly at phase 3. The scientists who built them are now studying which populations the spread seems to ignore. Because it does ignore some people. Individuals who accumulate tau and show no cognitive decline, and nobody can fully explain why. What they have found tentatively in language that never makes headlines is that the rate of conversion is variable. Something modulates how fast the knots form and how far the released proteins travel, and that something is not a drug. Now here is the part that contradicts what you believe. You have been told that cognitive training protects you. Brain games, puzzles. Crosswords push your brain harder and it grows stronger. That is the conventional story. But high synaptic activity, the kind intense cognitive effort produces, actually increases the release of tau into the extracellular space, the gap between neurons. This was published in Nature Neuroscience, and almost no mainstream outlet reported it. High performers who drive their brains relentlessly without managing the recovery window may be accelerating the very spread they think they're preventing. Cognitive training is not wrong. The timing is wrong. What high performers who understand this research actually do is something most people dismiss as too simple to matter. They protect the slow-wave sleep window with a fanaticism they usually reserve for diet or training. Not total sleep hours, not REM, the specific deep sleep stages N3 that occur in the first half of the night between roughly 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. During slow-wave sleep, your brain activates the glymphatic system, a fluid clearance network that flows through the spaces surrounding your neurons and physically flushes the extracellular space, the same space where released tau proteins sit, waiting to be absorbed by the next cell. The glymphatic flush is your brain's overnight cleanup, and it runs almost exclusively during N3 sleep. Disrupting that window, sleeping late, drinking within 3 hours of bed, keeping the room warm does not just leave you tired. It leaves those proteins in place, ready to convert, ready to spread one neuron further by morning. This is why the protocol is not a supplement. It is a time and a temperature. Tonight, one decision. Move your sleep start 30 minutes earlier than last week. Cool the room to 67 degrees. No alcohol after 7 p.m. The glymphatic system will run its flush. Your brain will clear what moved today. That is the entire rule. Non-negotiable every night because the spread does not take nights off. But tau is not the only protein doing this. There is a second misfolding cascade running in parallel in a different region, triggered by a different mechanism, and some researchers now believe it fires first. That region is where we go next.